Welcome to Dream by Design with Melissa Banks, where women share their dreams, struggles, and successes. How they were able to persevere despite the fear and create the life they want and deserve. If you're looking for inspiration to move you past where you normally would stop, then this is the show for you. Here's your host, Melissa Banks.
Welcome to Dream by Design with Melissa Banks. I'm excited you could be with us today. I'm your host, Melissa Banks. Today, we have another amazing woman to share her journey with us and how she was able to keep going despite the circumstances. Today, our guest is Mary Ellen Ciganovich. Mary Ellen is a writer, speaker, educator, and author. She is director of Real Health in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Mary Ellen knows when you're really enthusiastic about life, you can live peaceably. Thank you, Mary Ellen, for being here today.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Let's just get started, Mary Ellen. Your background is in education. How did you get started on the healing journey? How did all that start?
Well, I guess I've been on it all my life because, when I was 6 years old, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and I was always told what I couldn't do by my family, and I'm like, why are they saying that to me? And then, of course, I went on and went to high school and went to college, and when I went to college, my mom said, you will go into education, so I'm like, okay, no problem. You just really didn't fight with my mom. So I graduated from college, and I started teaching middle school. And for some reason, I always taught in the inner city. It's just really where, I totally enjoyed it. And I just loved learning things that I had never been exposed to before because, my life had been privileged and had been so sheltered. And I learned so much, and I always hoped that my students learned as much from me as I learned from them. And so, I went through, I had a daughter, although I was always told I couldn't have kids, because of the laws against people with epilepsy having kids, which aren't enforced. And went through that, and then I was diagnosed, I got divorced, and thought, okay, and I really never saw that coming. And then I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1986. And I thought, well, I handled the epilepsy. I guess I can handle this too, although MS has been quite a challenge because you never know. My particular case of MS seems to be very manageable, and I know that's what everybody sees when they look at me. They don't look at all the hard work that's put behind it, all the discipline that it takes, and all of the learning about what to eat, what not to eat, to exercise, to not exercise, And so I started with the Atlanta Awareness Center. I went there after my first divorce because I wanted to learn about myself. And they put me on a path towards spiritual healing, which, I had never been exposed to before. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and my first husband was Methodist, so I'd read every book in the Bible. But their technique was basically attitudinal awareness, becoming aware of your attitudes and how your attitudes then create your life, basically how your thoughts create your life and how your attitudes or not being aware of your attitudes can create a chaotic life. So I started learning there, and then, of course, I was still teaching in school, so I started to use these attitudinal principles in my classroom. And I used them as, it wasn't a truth of the day, it was a vitamind, which meant a vitamin for your mind. And I just wouldn't have the kids read the objective and everything. We would actually talk about these things. And I would put up there, okay, the vitamind is for today, who wants to read it? And I'd say, okay, Letitia, read it. And she'd read, like, what you focus on expands, what you think about happens. And then I'd ask the class, well, what does that mean? And they, a lot of them would just say, well, I just focus on $1 million, it'll come. I said, you can focus on it, and you're going to focus on the work and the actions that you want to take, the passion you have in your life to create that $1 million and being successful in your life. And then, of course, they would tell me all the holdbacks they had, because of things that were going on in our society at the time and unfortunately still sometimes go on. And I would tell them, look, you don't have to be held back just because somebody in society says you have to be held back. You can do what you want to do as long as you do it kind and you be it nice. And I just think I've always been on this path, Melissa, of spiritual healing. I just didn't know.
Mary Ellen, something you're saying that's speaking to me loud and clear is you talked about the challenges, the health challenges you face, but ultimately when you started this journey, it all went back to attitude, mindset, and believing that you can and being willing to do the work. And really, that's how you push through all of those challenges. And then you took that and you started using that with your students and implanting that in their minds very early on. So I think that is just an amazing journey just right there. So it sounds like it did start really early, but look at the past and how amazing is that.
I know. And
so Mary Ellen,
Go ahead.
I'm
sorry. And some of my students are still
when did you know?
And they'll say, well, I got a lot from your class, but I really got a lot from those vitamins, and I still read them today, and I read them to my kids. And I'm like, wow, that's good.
Right, that is good, and that is, I wrote that down because that's very new to me, that term, vitamind, and I'll have to use that later. No. Okay, so that took you to writing. I know you're an author as well. So when did you know that you wanted to put your thoughts and your beliefs into the written word and share it with the world?
Well, I always knew I wanted to write a book, even when I was little. And so when I got divorced from my first husband, I was single for a while, played racquetball, of course, got the MS diagnosis and taught school. And then I was introduced to my second husband, who I'm still married to, Pete. And I told him, I said, well, I want to write a book. He said, well, you want to keep teaching? And I said, well, I'd really like to write a book. So after we got married, we were in North Carolina, and I thought about going back to teaching, and I thought, no, I want to write that book. So I sat down, and I was really going to start writing a book about education and how our educational system needs to progress and be better. And oh, my gosh, I struggled with that. And, as with anything, Melissa, when you struggle with it, you're not supposed to do it. You're just on the wrong path. So I just put that away, and I started hearing these things, these little messages, how God speaks to all of us. And I started hearing these things on awareness and fear and unconditional love and no motives and judgment, no judgments and faith and just all these little vignettes, okay? So I told God, I said, no, you have picked the wrong person. You need to tell these to somebody else. I'm not going to write that down. And he just kept bugging me. And so finally I said, okay, fine, I will write them down. So I did. Pete really thought I was having a nervous breakdown because one day I just started writing, and I was writing longhanded at the time. And literally 5 legal pads later, I was done. And I put those on the computer we had at the house at the time. And I just looked at them. I would go in there to clean that room, and I'd see those legal pads. And God kept telling me to put them on the computer. So I said, fine. And this was back in 1998. And so I sat down, put them on the computer. I said, there. And then I sent them to a publisher, and then a publisher picked it up. And that was my first version of Healing Words, Life Lessons to Inspire. So, then my publisher says, well, you got to get on Facebook to get these out. So I'm like, okay. So I looked at Facebook, and I looked at a lot of the negative stuff, and I didn't want to do anything like that because I wanted this to be a positive spirit. I wanted everybody to wake up. What I'm trying to do is to wake people up to the goodness they have inside themselves, to the kindness they have inside themselves, to the generosity they have inside themselves, to quit judging others because in judging others, you're judging yourself. So I came up with putting a truth of the day on the Internet. So I started on Facebook and then went to Instagram, and now they're all over the place. And as you know, they're on WYAD-FM, your wonderful radio station there in Mississippi, and through iHeartRadio and through Mr. Cyrus Webb on Conversations Live. And it's just taken a life of its own, and I'm just so blessed and humbled. And it's just so gratifying, and I know you feel the same way about what you're doing, Melissa, to know that you're on the right path that God put you here to do.
Oh, absolutely. And Mary Ellen, as you were talking, I was thinking about your truth of the day and the fact that it's something positive, something you can feed on, something you can learn from. Because you're right, there's a lot of negative and not so favorable stuff in social media, but to have something that's positive that you can pull on is amazing. And you're absolutely right. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity to be able to pour into people on a different level by the exposure that we have here with Conversations Media Group. You're absolutely right. Now, Mary Ellen, what challenges specific to your business as a female entrepreneur have you had to face, and how have you overcome those?
Well, a lot of the challenges I get are like, do you have a degree in counseling? Do you have a degree in psychology? And I'm kind of like, no, I have a degree in education. So I do see clients, and I have them sign an agreement that they know that I'm not a licensed counselor or anything. And the agreement that I have with them is that if they've learned something from me, at the end, they pay me. And if they don't learn anything, don't pay me. I mean, it's just real simple. And I've had people pay me 2, 3, 4 times of what I ask for a fee and they keep coming back saying, oh, my gosh, I just have, or they call when they get down, or they call on Zoom or whatever. But the challenge is, for women everywhere are just, where you're a woman, you can't do that. Well, you're a woman, you can't lift that. Well, I'm sorry. I worked in my yard like all day yesterday with landscapers and stuff, moving trees and stuff, and I can do that in the cool weather. With my MS, when it gets warm, I can't do that because my MS will flare up in the heat. So, I don't know. You have to take when somebody says something to you like, "Well, you can't do that." You have a choice. Are you going to believe them? Or are you going to believe your knowings and your link to your God, to your Holy Spirit? And you should always follow that link to your knowings, to your Holy Spirit. It doesn't matter what the person says. I was working with a client today, and she was like, well, the doctor says this. I said, I don't care what the doctor says. What do you say? What does God say to you? And I'm not talking about being disrespectful to anybody. Doctors are here, most of them are trying to help and do a good thing. And there are a lot of doctors out there that, they're really busy. And you got to understand, they're people too, and they can make mistakes. So you have to take charge of your own health. You've got to take charge of your own life. You've got to speak up for yourself. And I think as women, a lot of times we've been taught, well, we're women, you can't speak up for yourself. Excuse me? Who left their brain at the door? I mean, I don't know. And
well, you're absolutely right, though, Mary Ellen. It's staying focused on what you believe for yourself and not listening to the naysayers or the people who tell you, no, you can't do it. I think that's amazing. Also, because where I grew up, having my own business was not something that was really discussed. So believing in myself comes first. That comes first, believing in yourself, in my opinion. And then it comes to work. So basically keeping your focus on what it is that you want to do.
Oh, yes.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dream by Design with Melissa Banks. Today, our guest is Ask Mary Ellen, writer, speaker, educator, and author. Go ahead, Mary Ellen.
And I had lost my thought there. I apologize for that.
Okay.
But, so many times,
okay.
not only do other people hold us back, our ego, our mind holds us back. You'll get a thought, and you'll think to yourself, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. And it was even with myself before I started doing my Miracles with Mary Ellen video on Monday, and I'm doing Miracle Moments now and Miracle Minute. And I thought to myself, I can't do that. Nobody's going to listen to that. And I thought, well, what's the harm in trying? Just do it.
Absolutely.
And I've been doing it now for over a year, and it's been, I think, very well received. So,
and you're very comfortable with it because I've listened to so many of them. Okay, so the year 2020, Mary Ellen, it was a year. It was a big year, lots of positive, lots of negative. But how was your business impacted in 2020, and how were you able to make any pivots or necessary adjustments in your business?
Well, my business was better than ever, I think, because people were into so much anxiety, they had to talk to somebody. And, you can make, just because something's going on in the world that is not a good thing doesn't mean that it can affect your business in a positive way, and it can affect your business in a negative way. Okay, you can shut down, and sometimes you have to shut down if you're a restaurant or a food eatery. I mean, that's a whole different business type of scenario. But, you can reinvent your business on a different level. How can you bring your food to people's homes? How can you bring your messages in other ways? How can you do what you're doing and your passion in a different way now that times have changed or times were changing? I learned that I didn't have to go to the gym every day. I could simply walk downstairs and work out, which is great because I don't have to drive. And a lot of times when I'm fatigued with my MS, and I learned that I could do without so many things that I thought were totally necessary. And I learned a lot about myself. You get to a point and you think, well, I know myself. Not until 2020 came around. And then, it's like anything. You think you're having a good day, and then all of a sudden you fall in that hole in the sidewalk. And because God wants to jerk you back into balance, because you have to stay in balance. That's a key to health, is a key to success. It's a key to a lot of things in life.
Yes, you're absolutely right. 2020 for me did cause me to adjust my thinking so that I could pivot my business, so that I could adjust what I was doing, because maybe it was just time to do that, and maybe if it had not been for the circumstances we're in, I would never have done that. And then so many doors that opened because I was able to change my mind may not have even opened. So I think that's wonderful. And it also, like you said, it caused you to look into yourself, to know that, I was used to going to the gym, but now I can be downstairs and do it and still have the mindset and the courage to keep staying healthy. One of the things I wanted you to speak on a little bit, Mary Ellen, is about your journey. You shared some health challenges that you have faced that pushed you through your journey that you had to, and even now you still have to push through. Do you ever just sit back and say, why me? Why did I have to have MS? And why did I have to have epilepsy? Or why did I have to go through the divorce? Or do you ever get into just a why me place? And if you do, how do you get out of it?
Well, probably more than I'd like to admit, because when my MS flares up, I do get a little angry with God and say, okay, God, enough is enough, because it'll get painful and all kinds of things. But, you really have to, what I teach people to do is to step back and say, okay, if that's going on, okay, the divorce happened for a reason. What do I need to learn about myself so in a relationship that will not happen again? What do I need to learn about myself? And all of us need to learn to become what we seek. If we want somebody to be respectful to us, we have to be respectful to ourselves. If we want somebody to be kind, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to be kind to them. So, you learn on every step of the way. With the health challenges, I had to learn. I remember when I was first diagnosed with MS, and that was back in 1986, and there weren't any shots for MS. There weren't any treatments for MS at all. I was basically told to, go home, write out your will, and we'll see you later. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm listening to that. And the MS Society told me on the phone, well, we hate to tell you. And I said, well, I hate to tell you. And I hung up on them. Because my students will tell you, you don't want to get her angry, because when she gets angry, she does tend to get a little ornery. And, I just wasn't going to listen to it. I wasn't going to take it. So I searched for attitudinal ways. I studied Chinese herbs. I studied Ayurvedic healing, which is a form of healing from India. I studied all kinds of things. I studied the first positive book I read about MS is called the MS Diet Book. And for anybody with MS or newly diagnosed with MS out there, I highly recommend it, because it's one of the most positive books on MS out there. Dr. Swank tells you how foods can trigger episodes, how climate can trigger your episodes. You have to look for your triggers in yourself for your, whether it's a diagnosis or your triggers, whether it's a trigger when you get angry with somebody. What is that trigger? What are they trying to teach you? What is your diagnosis trying to teach you? It's all a lesson. It's all things that we all have to learn.
I definitely agree with you. I have a condition that causes extreme pain and on the right side of my head. And at times when it's aggravated, being in the event industry, it can get aggravated in the worst possible times, right? So yeah. I had to just learn. So I would get in a place where I didn't like the idea that I even had to deal with it, or I would get angry about it. But I also had to learn to get into a place. I know what triggers it. I know what not to do. And then I push through those times to get through where I need to be. So, but it also causes me to be a stronger person so I can deal with pain at a level that some people cannot. So What would you say, Mary Ellen, if you had an opportunity to speak to a woman who has faced some similar challenges that you have faced, but she still has the desire to start a business?
I would tell her to do it. I mean, if that's your passion and you know what you want to do, I would tell her to set her goal and then put like an action plan together, a step 1, step 2, this is what I got to do, this is what I need to do. And if you don't have an action plan, I'll be willing to talk with anybody about it, trying to put it together or help you. There are plenty of people around who will help you and will help you for free. We're out there to encourage everybody. We're out there to inspire everybody. We're not out there to gouge and take money. Now, there are people that will do that too, so you need to be careful. I would say if you want to start a business, if you want to become whatever you see, if you see it, if you believe it, if you know it, then you can be it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Mary Ellen, I saw something that you said, and I want you to tell us what that means. You said, make your day a miracle day. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, see, people think miracles are like, Christ changing the water into wine, and of course that was a miracle, of course. I'm not saying it's not. But a miracle happens any time you perceive something differently. If you take a situation that's a problem, okay, and you see it as a problem, it's going to be a problem, and it's going to be a bigger problem and a bigger problem and a bigger problem the more you see it that way. But if you step back and say, how can I perceive this differently? How can I learn from this? You have just created your own miracle in your own day, every day of your life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mary Ellen, for joining us today. Do you have any final words before we wrap up for our audience? And make sure you let them know how to stay connected to you.
Well, I want everyone to encourage each other, be kind to each other, be generous with each other, help each other, and let's let go of the criticism and the judgment and the motives and the expectations, and just come from your heart and do what you know to be good. And if you want to connect with me, you can go to AskMaryEllen.com. I have 2 books out, Healing Words, Life Lessons to Inspire, and Truth, Taking Responsibility Unleashes True Healing. Both books are full of truths. They're not facts. These are truths that you can use any day of the year, any place, for any person. So I'm through AskMaryEllen.com. Please connect with me because I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much, Melissa. I appreciate being on your show. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mary Ellen, for being our guest today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to today's edition of Dream by Design. I'm your host, Melissa Banks, saying all your dreams are possible. Believe in yourself, work hard, and don't quit. Until next time, thank you for choosing Dream by Design with Melissa Banks. Enjoy your day.